Well, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's so wonderful to see a lot of familiar faces and lots of new faces, which is exactly what we hope for this series. My name is Rabbi Lydia Medwin. I'm one of the rabbis who has the honor of serving at the temple with Rabbi Peter Berg. And welcome to Pipelines to Possibilities series. This is number 2 in our 3-part series about the impact of judges on ending mass incarceration. This is sponsored by the Multi-Faith Initiative to End Mass Incarceration, or EMI for short. It started with a vision from Reverend Raphael Warnock and Reverend John Vaughn at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church. They brought in the temple where I am honored to serve, and now we are excited that we partner in addition with Odyssey Impact, with Reverend Katie Gibbons-Kime, who I saw on the call here somewhere, and partners from dozens of faith organizations across the country and hundreds of people of faith and moral courage. And now all of you who are welcome officially to the EMI network and the family. A year and a half ago, we met over at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, and we held a conference there where hundreds of people committed to continuing to work together. Since then, we have established 3 main goals: to increase the number of congregations doing the work to end mass incarceration, to create a cohesive narrative and develop a theology that represents what we hope justice looks like, that describes the call of this work into our world and inspires us to act every day. And of course, to advocate for the change needed to our incarceration system. We are currently on the ground in 6 different states with teams and partners working there. We have a national strategy team. We partner also with the music industry through an organization called Calling All Crows. And of course, we exist online with everybody else these days. We want to thank all of our panelists today, Judges Crawford, Givens, Kelly, and Shoob. Shout out to an amazing temple member there. And of course, Karen James from the NIA. Many thanks to Gloria Moore, who wanted to host this evening so much and got caught up with some laryngitis. And so we pray for her healing very speedily. We thank you so much, Judge Velma Tilley, who helped to make this, identify the judges who are going to serve on our panel tonight, and our amazing moderator. And thank you so much to our partners at the JCPA for all kinds of technical magic they're doing behind the scenes, and all of the supporters of the EMI network in this series. As we think about why we wanted to gather here this evening, I'm reminded of the text from Isaiah 42, where it says, "I am Adonai, I'm God. I've called you to righteousness. I've taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you a covenant to the people, a light unto the nations, to open the eyes of the blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in the darkness." And I take this as really a calling, this idea that God calls us into covenant through action. And a piece of that action is specifically to be thinking about those whom we don't often think about, those who are hidden away from our sight, and how we might serve them even, those who are perhaps in a different kind of need than others, with a sense of Tselem Elohim, that they too are crafted in the image of God and that their lives matter. And so we hope that our panel tonight inspires us to really consider that text and figure out ways to bring it to life every single day. I can see that in the chat, some people are already saying hello to us. That's wonderful. If you'd like to put your name in the chat, add what city you're coming from today, an organization you might be affiliated with. We would love to say hello to you and see you say hello to others in this room. A reminder as we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We will keep our mics on mute. And also, if you don't mind, unlike so many other places where they want you to have your camera on, here we'll ask you to keep your video off so that we can see our speakers front and center. You're welcome to put your questions that you have along the way in the chat, although we have a very full agenda tonight. I'm not sure we'll get to all of them, but we would love you to add your questions so that we can have a sense, and the people on this panel can have a sense of the kinds of things you're thinking about and the kinds of questions you hold. And this video is live on Facebook. It will be recorded there in perpetuity. And we're so grateful that it will be able to be accessed by lots of people who may be unable to join us right now. And with that, I will hand the microphone over to my friend and colleague, Judge Velma Tilley. Thank you so much for moderating tonight.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Lydia. That was a wonderful opening, and welcome to everyone that's here. Just we're so pleased to have you here. Just to let you know a little bit about me, I am a retired juvenile court judge, and that's the way I met the first person I'm going to introduce, and I'm going to introduce everybody first, and then we're going to start with our presentations. But I want to let you know that Chief Judge Vincent Crawford is with us. He is from the Dekalb Juvenile Court. He also sits by designation in the Superior Court of Dekalb County, Georgia, one of the major metro Atlanta courts. Thank you, Judge Crawford, for being here. Thank you. And now we have Judge Amber Givens. I'm going to do people in alphabetical order. That's the way I know how to do things so I don't give ranking, but there's Judge Amber Givens. She is from the 282nd Judicial District Court of Dallas, Texas. She, along with Judge Kelly, are the original, two of the original four Pipline for Possibility judges. And so we'll hear more about that shortly. Then I want to tell you about Karen James. Karen James is a senior project assistant from the National Incarceration Association. She is an impacted individual by way of having a formerly incarcerated son, and we will hear about her son's and her family's journey during this presentation. Then we have Judge Shequitta Kelly, also from Dallas, Texas, from the Dallas County Criminal Court, number 11. She has a really interesting domestic violence offender program I'd love to hear about. Then we have Judge Wendy Shoob. Judge Shoob is currently a senior judge in the state of Georgia. She was a Superior Court judge in Fulton County, the other major metro Atlanta county. She also is now is a mediator. So those are our four judges and our other special guest, Ms. James. And so as we start out this presentation, I gave some thought to how judges can, or how people can impact judges and how judges can impact ending mass incarceration. So the first thing I thought about was that people who care about people need to become lawyers. And then lawyers who particularly care about people need to become judges. So I want to tell you just a quick story that I heard. Judge Crawford and I have a friend, Brad Boyd, who recently retired from Fulton County Juvenile Court. And at his retirement, I heard an entertainer come and speak. He was totally unexpected that he was going to appear there. And he told a story about Brad Boyd, who came from Ohio, started out as a probation officer in Fulton County. And as a probation officer, he heard about all the unrest in a particular part of Fulton County. There were gangs, and this entertainer particularly was in a gang and was gang involved. And Brad ended up going on a particular Tuesday nights or whatever it was. Every week he was going to community meetings to figure out what was needed. What did the community need? What did these young men need from him, from the community, that could impact their lives in a better way? And he's saying to himself, what is this white guy doing coming to our community? You know, why is he doing this? He's not getting paid for it. And it made a huge impact on him. And so Brad then became a lawyer. He was a defense attorney. He was a prosecutor in juvenile court. And then he became a judge in the juvenile court of Fulton County. And that's where he stayed until he retired. And he had the kind of impact on this individual and other individuals that essentially transformed their lives. And that's why I think it's important for people who care about people to become lawyers, and lawyers who care about people to become judges. My second premise is that the juvenile court is an interrupter of the traditional pipeline, the pipeline that used to say the school to prison pipeline. So the juvenile court is an interrupter of that. And that's the way I felt about it. And I know that's the way Judge Crawford has felt about it. He also came up through as a lawyer in juvenile court, and then has now become a judge. DeKalb County has numerous programs that support kids and families. He is particularly in charge of the Commitment Alternative Program. So Judge Crawford, unmute yourself and tell us about yourself and about that program if you wish, or whatever program you wish to tell us about that can impact.
All right. Let me start by saying my favorite verse, and every time there's a new judge that comes on the bench in our county, I refer them to Micah 6:8, which says you to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And I have that on the bench to remind me of my role every day. I started out with legal services and left legal services and became a prosecutor for 4 years, and then went into defense work for 8 years. I then became a magistrate court judge, and then I got appointed to juvenile court. So I've seen all aspects of the criminal justice system and have been a part of all aspects of the criminal justice system. One of the things that we did in DeKalb County, we needed an intensive supervision program, and there was some grant funding, and we came up with the Commitment Alternative Program that Judge Tilley was talking about. And what it is, it's to prevent children from being committed to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and also to stop them from committing what are called SB 440, the adult offenses. And so there are three aspects of the program that we developed, and that home, school, and the community. We have counseling with family therapy that goes into the home to deal with the relationship between the child and the parent, and to set that foundation for a support system. One of the things we learned, if you don't have a good support system in the home, it doesn't matter what you put in place in the program, it's just not going to function. The other thing is school. I started out without an educational advocate. Now I have one. And what they do is they go in and look at the transcript, look at everything about the child education-wise, and decide if this child should remain in school or go into a GED program. What we have found is a lot of our young men specifically have done much better getting their GED. Now, it may take them a little longer, but getting their GED than functioning in the high school. One young man just told me high school was just a distraction for him, but studying for his GED, he finally got it. And then community, linking them with positive community resources. As simple as getting a library card to go up there and be on the computer for assignments. The other thing is I've linked several young men up with our mentoring program, DeKalb Alphas. We have a mentoring program 3rd through 12th grade. I've had several young men. I figured if we can get some autistic kids, we've mentored young men from through our program, and they graduate out our program at their battalion, then we can work with any kid possible, and that has happened. We have over 90% of our young men come from single homes, but mentoring programs in the community, we have a strong Pan-Hellenic, the African American Greeks in our county, and a lot of them have mentoring programs or offer services, and so we've relied on that. So connecting them to those resources. But the other part of it became very important. I don't know if any of you heard of the youth bill, which is basically the construction bill. It was a $3 million bill that we got from the federal government. And basically what it did is said, establish a kid, get them their GED, then they can go into the construction school, get certifications. They can do culinary, or they could do any medical assistance, and some of the things in the medical field. Now, what was important is because what they realized, there are those gap wages. And gap wages are those wages that sit above minimum wage, but below salary. And so these kids could go on a construction site with as many as 29 different certifications. And the more certifications they get, the more money they can make. So there's an incentive to educate themselves. We also, so what happens is kid comes in, gets a GED, then they go through life skills training, learning how to open a bank account and all these kinds of things. And then they actually can go to technical school, or they can go on to college. We pay for the books, we pay for those things for them to get their education. Short story, I had a young man come over transferred from Superior Court for armed robbery. And they said to me, well, Judge, we want 2 years. That's what he agreed to, 2 years going off. I looked down and realized that this young man had taken the GED while he was out on bond. He'd scored so high on the GED that he could go to any technical school for free. So I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm going to put you in youth bill because you've met the first requirement, but you come back here with a degree in something from technical school, and we're going to be able to work with you, and you're not going to, I'm not going to commit you, because you're either going to be a tax burden or a taxpayer. If I lock you up and commit you right now, that means someone's got to pay for you to sleep, eat, and all of those things. What I want you to be is a taxpayer. So I want you to go and get this HVAC. That's what he wanted to do. And sent him off. He came back in 12 months. He went to school year round, came back in 12 months with his HVAC certification, went through our youth bill program. He is now married. He is the maintenance manager of an apartment complex, and he has a kid, and he's a taxpayer. And I just think the foundation for any of the young men, even the young men that have gone through our mentoring program, we stress education. I tell them all, you are good at something, and there's a need for your talent out here somewhere. And you have met your purpose when your talent and that need come together. And that's what I emphasize. That's what we do in the programs we have in juvenile court. We've been doing it over 6 years now, and I've had some success stories. Our youth bill will be recognized by the federal government in December because we have met our requirements under the grant of servicing 70 individuals, young ladies and young men. I had one of my young ladies win the real barrel contest of lugging the most stuff. So she went out there, and I encouraged her to do it, and she did it. So we will be recognized in December because we would have met our service required of 70 individuals, and we will be 9 months shy of our grant completion in doing that. So that's what I do.
That's awesome. And so will you be able to continue that program after the grant period is up?
They came and they did an audit, and they asked me last year to add on. And I said, hold up, let me get through this first group first. And we're going to reconsider that at the beginning of the year, because we will be done with our requirement of servicing 70. And then we just have to monitor them for another year. So we had 5 of them that went off to one of the top African-American construction companies in the nation, a $1 billion company, and they're now employed there. So we've been successful with these young people that and it's age 16 to 26, let me say that. So they weren't just juveniles. Some of these young people came from the community, 20, 21 years old.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So I want to go forward and talk about one of the things that when we go to judges conferences, and Judge Crawford will remember this too, there are 2 schools of thought about how one goes about judging. And one is you just call balls and strikes. Remember that one, Judge Crawford?
Yes.
And so there are judges that think, practice their position as a judge, just sitting here, you put it before me and I'll just decide, balls and strikes. And then there are other judges like Judge Crawford and like the judges I'm about to introduce you to, that think differently about that think that our role is to impact the community, to advocate for change. And so we have Judge Amber Givens and Judge Shequitta Kelly, and I think I'll call on Judge Givens first because she already got a heads up about this. And who are the original Pipeline to Possibilities judges. These are judges who go into the community and have an impact to the community they serve. So, Judge Givens?
Actually, Judge Kelly and I can tag team. This is what we do.
Okay, go for it.
So, it was 2016 actually. And just to kind of give you background on how Pipeline of Possibilities was birthed, we were all at Concord, myself, Judge Kelly, Judge Green, Judge Huff, and we were watching a clip from the 13th Amendment by our amazing sister, Ava DuVernay, and talking about when slavery was abolished, how the 13th Amendment stood in and said, well, slavery is abolished. However, a person's liberty can be taken if they are convicted of crimes. And she talked about reading scores and how we have marginalized certain sectors of society and the impact it's having and how we're creating a pipeline to prison. And it was just very clear to us that we had to do something to disrupt that pipeline. And so the four of us got together and created Pipeline of Possibilities. And we started in 2016 and we've had sessions since 2017. And our hope ultimately is that the Pipeline of Possibilities program will become a part of the state of Texas's educational system across the country, beyond Texas. And so we're excited about that. I'll let Judge Kelly talk about the specifics of our program.
So yes, our program, we typically will take 2 schools a semester because, well, we're going to start taking 3 schools because we've added more judges. Our program quickly became popular and desired by many school districts, but there were only 4 of us. And so right now we have it set up so that there are 2 schools a semester. And we start the program off with a skit. So we invite all the students to the courtroom and we have hired actors to come in as if they're in court, and then a fight breaks out. And so these students don't realize that all of this is a skit, and we have hidden 3 felony offenses and 3 misdemeanor offenses that they witness in a matter of 20 seconds. And I mean, we don't tell anyone. The teachers were shocked. Everyone's kind of like frozen when it happens, but it's a great way for them to experience the criminal justice system so that we can build on each element of the criminal justice system so that they understand the criminal justice system. And that's the goal. So we go through, we talk about the charges, the punishment ranges of the charges, bonds, jury trials, grand jury, jury selection, and we have them at the end. So, and I'm skipping ahead because there's a lot to the program, but each session is different, but we talk about the criminal justice system in each session based off of that skit that they saw. And so in that skit, we have family violence, we have assault to a public servant because we have the actor hit the bailiff, and then we throw in sexting because in high school, there's a lot of that going on. So we add an allegation that she sent him a picture and he showed the picture to other people and he shared it to other people. And then we ask these questions throughout. We give them binders where the law is explained, and then we go to their classrooms. After that first session, we go to their classrooms. We meet them where they are. We take the robes off, put our shirts on that say Pipeline of Possibilities, and our blue jeans and our tennis shoes, and we sit down in their classrooms and we say, "Okay, tell me, what do you think a judge has to consider when giving a bond to an offender who has 3 felonies and 3 misdemeanor offenses?" And so we just sit down and have a real life conversation with them about what they witnessed, and they become more invested in learning about it because they saw it before their eyes. And then, when we start, well, this could be this, and this is this much time in jail. And, what if he hits her again? Do we let him get out? What about the community? What if he has a criminal history? There's so many factors we throw at them to make them realize 20 seconds can change my whole life. But then in those sessions, we give them real life skills too. So typically the session is about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we'll break it in half, and we'll deal with the law, the beginning of the hour, and then we try to address real life situations like social media or gun violence, bullying, and have discussions about that. And we bring in different guest speakers. We bring in a gynecologist for the young women. We bring in male mentors for the young men to teach them how to tie ties and how to dress appropriately and how to introduce yourself and look another man in the eye when you're talking to him. All of those things are packed into this, this program. And then at the end, we give them homework. We call it fun work. Judge Givens loves to give the fun work.
And they love me for it.
But the goal is when they first get in there, when they first come into that courthouse, they're kind of like, just another field trip. Yeah, we're going to the courthouse. But by the time the entire session is over, it's semester long. And we meet sometimes twice a month, typically 1 to 2 times a month. By the time it's over, they're like, wait. This is the last time we're going to see you all? The session is over? Wait, what, you're not coming back? And that's the tough part for us because we have established a relationship and a rapport with them and taught them so much that they start to look to us for guidance. And I'll let Judge Givens talk about the reviews that we got from some of the students and how we realized, although it is a lot of work and it is very tiring, there's many times when we're in the middle of a jury trial and we have pipeline of possibilities at lunchtime. And we jump off that bench, we tell our jurors to take lunch, we jump in our car, we drive to the school, we do our hour session, and sometimes one of us has to stay and finish the session because the other person has to go back and answer a question from the jury. I mean, it's hectic. But when we get the feedback that we do from these young adults, you can't help but to do more. You can't help but to keep trying and giving that extra energy because you realize, hey, this is really working. This is really changing that narrative. Judge Givens?
Yeah, so we decided that we wanted to really understand the impact we were having, right? Because we're hearing it, we're hearing from the principals that, gosh, they're actually attending school because they're so excited about you all coming. But, what did it mean to them? How did it change their lives? And so we created an exit questionnaire, and it's moving. I think it moved us to tears. One of the young ladies said, in my neighborhood where I'm from, people have essentially zero expectations of me. And coming and seeing you all, the 4 of you have different walks of life. You all none of us have had really traditional pathways to the bench. And the way you all work together, and I just see myself in you. And because I see you doing it, I believe that I can do it too, right? And I think that's where we kind of talk about how do we decide what students to work with? Well, we were looking at the highest rates of incarceration in Dallas, and that's where we wanted to go. And so we picked those schools and zip codes that had the highest rates of incarceration in Texas. And I mean, literally those zip codes had the highest rates in Texas. And so we didn't pick schools where we're like, oh, they don't really need our help. No, we are trying to get into the schools where people don't think that they're going to graduate. And when we identify the students that we work with at each school, we meet with the administration months before we actually start the sessions. And we're asking them, give us the kids that you think won't make it. And so the idea is to give them hope. Like Judge Kelly said, to change that narrative because they hear that, they know that, right? And so we go in for 6 months, and at the end, we have a college explosion.
Oh,
right?
I forgot the college explosion.
And we know, and that's so much fun because, Judge Kelly is a member of Delta Sigma Theta. We let her in the group though. And the original 4, it's 3 Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority members, myself included. Judge Kelly.
You didn't clap on the Delta.
I'm an alpha. Yeah, I gotta clap for the AKA. Yeah, I got to.
Thank you. And so we want to introduce them to that life because many of them, they have no idea what a sorority or fraternity is, what the purpose beyond that is, that it's a lifetime commitment to service, which has really shaped the way we sit on the bench. Because that's why we have created these programs, and we don't clock out at 4:30 every day because we understand that we have a bigger obligation to our community to bridge the gap between the courthouse and the community. And that's what this program does. And so it becomes, we talk to them about consent, and we tell them, we're not going to tell your parents. You can talk to us, because a lot of times, and even, with the gynecologist, I'm telling you, I'm learning stuff, but they know a lot. And if you judge them, they shut down on you. So it becomes, gosh, like we're not their parents, but we're their confidants. And we would rather them get the information from us than their fellow classmates, because they're all learning together. And so it's amazing. If you all want to find out more about our program, we do have a website, www.pipelinetopossibilities.com. We're also on Instagram at Pipeline to Possibilities. We're on Facebook, Pipeline to Possibilities. So, keep up with us. We'd love to come back to Atlanta. We had such an amazing time last year at the conference. But that's the condensed version of our program.
Velma, you're on mute.
Judge.
Judge Tilley, you're on mute.
What a bad moderator. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So Judge Givens, what is your word of mouth? What's the word of mouth program?
So remember I was talking about that non-traditional pathway to the bench. Well, I created the word of mouth series in 2016 because I've also been the family member of an incarcerated, impacted individual. And so I remember being in the courtroom and my family member was a person and then all of a sudden a number and immediately an inmate. And we had no idea what was going on. And so the idea of the word of mouth series is to demystify the criminal justice system. My first session in 2016 was about the grand jury. And we know now across the country, many times before the many police shootings that have happened, people didn't know what the grand jury was. They didn't understand the impact of a grand jury. And so the idea was, why is the system so convoluted? And it's convoluted because nobody really knows what's going on. And I think that's one of the jobs of a judge is to educate the community about the system. And so I've talked about everything from what are your rights when an officer is executing a search warrant at your house. Jury serve is more than just a summons. And so the idea is to get people more invested in the system so they don't feel like they're subject to the system, but they are also a part of it. And we're all responsible for trying to make the change that we want to see, because it's really easy to complain about things that you see on TV. But the last time you got a summons in the mail, did you go? You may not have been eligible to serve. You may not have been available for whatever reason, but we all have a duty. And so just hoping that the education component of that changes people's perspective on the criminal justice system.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for telling us about it. And Judge Kelly, I really am interested in, and I've forgotten the name of the program, but it's your domestic violence offender program. And tell us about how that will impact, obviously, incarceration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me say that I have been in the field of domestic violence since 1998. And it wasn't until I had a young offender standing before me about to plead, and I stopped. He had tattoos all over his face and on his neck, and he appeared to me to be just a hard person. And I stopped and I asked him, I don't know why I asked this question, but I said, do you have any children? And he said, I have a son. And I said, and where's your father? And he started crying. And that caught me off guard, and he put his head down. I wasn't prepared for that. And I still keep asking myself, what made you ask that question? I don't know, but he said, I don't know him. And so it was in that moment that I saw him as a little boy. And I thought, he did not grow up wanting to be a domestic violence offender. No one does. But we have given so many resources to the victims of domestic violence, which we should. However, we haven't given any resources to the offenders of domestic violence. So what is happening is offenders are committing domestic violence. They're getting jail time served, or placed on probation where they go to these classes. And I've been to the classes. Some of them are really good and some of them could improve. But after the classes, they're sent right back out into the community. So that leaves two things. Either the offender is going to reoffend with the same victim if he hasn't been properly rehabilitated, or he's going to find a new victim. Both are bad situations. So what I've learned while being a judge is that we aren't properly rehabilitating the offender. And that's how we need to start cracking down on domestic violence. A lot of these offenders have mental health issues that are not diagnosed, and a lot of them have substance abuse issues. So after I met that gentleman, I decided I was going to be the one who took the risk, because a lot of people, when they hear domestic violence offender, they don't want to give them a job. They don't want them staying in their house. They don't want to have anything. They don't want to be a part of a rehabilitation program. They're just so afraid of a domestic violence offender that the resources are limited. So I was okay with taking the risk and being the judge that was going to give these first-time young offenders a second chance. And I created the program Intercepted. It's a 9-month program. It meets the offender where he truly is. So it starts off with getting to know the offender, their background. We have a mental health exam done on them. We have a assessment done, substance abuse assessment, a life assessment, where one of the questions on the life assessment is, what does your most successful friend do? Because I want to know the company that you keep. That says a lot about you. So once we have done the assessment, I have a treatment team of 8 people, and they're from probation, the state of Texas, the PD's office. I have a mental health provider on the team, and a substance abuse provider. And we sit down and we look at all of this information about the offender, including the police report, and we design an individualized treatment plan for each offender. No offender has the exact same treatment plan, because we're not the same people. And so we all haven't had the same struggles. You need individual treatment. And what happens is they start off with the treatment phase, and that's a couple months long. And then they go into the rehabilitation phase, where they're paired with a mentor. And this is a mentor who will guide them through what was once a dream. We try to make it a reality. So one of the questions on their assessment form is, what is your dream job? And you'd be surprised to learn that most people don't know. They haven't thought about it. And so that's another thing. We have the mentor walk that process. Well, at some point in your life, you wanted to be something, and you change that. So what is it that you want to be? And in between all of that, I immerse them in real life skills. For example, this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I gave each one of them a topic, and they had to present to me a 3-minute speech on domestic violence. What's the cycle of domestic violence? What's victim blaming? What is the correlation between domestic violence and animal abuse? And so it required them to, one, work with their mentor, because a lot of them, they've never had to present anything. And it required them to learn more about domestic violence. So I do stuff like that, job skills. They have to have a license. They have to have a GED before they graduate, or have a full-time job. My thought process behind all of this is, if you give someone something worth living for, they don't want to commit crimes and ruin everything they've worked so hard to get. And for some people, it's a simple GED certificate. I had a girl in my program, and when I told her she had to get her GED, she was like, I'm not smart enough for that. She had a real bad attitude. And I said, well, too bad, you have to figure it out. So she got her GED. It took her a while because she kept quitting. Every time she would not do as well as she wanted, she would quit. But when she got that GED, when she received it, she came flying into my courtroom just a random day. She didn't even wait until her court date. And she's running in with this sheet of paper, and she's like, Judge Kelly, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? And I was like, hold on. And finally, when I called her up, she was like, I got it. And I said, what? She says, my GED. That was the world for her. And from that, she got a job. Now she's trying to get into college. It just stimulated an area that was dead inside of her. And so I know, and it has been proven, because my program was established in 2016. I've had 1 reoffend. That's a 99% success rate. And I've had over 40 graduates. So it's been proven that if you pour into these individuals, they won't come back. But we have to take that time and not be afraid, because it's a domestic violence offender and, they deserve to rot. No, if we want to combat domestic violence, we have to hit it on both angles. So that's Intercepted.
Thank you so much. That's what a great program. And just for the non-legal people on the Zoom, PD means public defender. So So we'll remember that. But that was fantastic. And so to bring everybody up to date, what you've seen so far are people who cared about people became lawyers. And then those lawyers who cared about people became judges. And then some of those, we saw juvenile court as the interrupter of the pipeline to prison. And now we see 3 judges who do not call balls and strikes. They do not just call balls and strikes. They go out into their communities. So we've heard these great and inspiring stories, and thank you, all 3 of you, for that. So we turn to you, Judge Shoob, and my question for you: what impedes judges of general jurisdiction, which means superior court or these courts where these judges have been serving, what impedes them from interrupting the pipeline? And here we're looking at things like mandatory sentencing and the things that you found when you were a superior court judge. Judge Shoob, take it away.
So I was a superior court judge for 20 years. I started my career as a prosecutor. Then I became a divorce lawyer and a state court judge that handled misdemeanors in Georgia. But the superior court handles felony crimes and everything else, civil, family. But I found over time, because the legislature passed more and more onerous sentencing laws, that I think their intention was to guarantee a certain sentence for a certain crime. But what it actually accomplished was that it put the prosecutors in charge of sentencing. And over time, the judges realized that we were cut out of sentencing when it came to the most serious crimes. So in Fulton County in Atlanta, where I served, we had a pretty combative relationship with the local prosecutor, who has just lost his election, I'm so sorry to say. But we found that the line prosecutors were coming into court asking for the maximum sentence for every crime. When it was a smaller crime, the judges were able to handle that by resolving cases with allowing the defendant just to plead guilty and be sentenced by the judge, because the judge was going to craft a sentence that they could live with, and we just would cut the prosecutor out of the equation. I mean, that because they came with their marching orders, and which were not reasonable in a lot of situations. But with the most serious crimes, the sentences were preordained by the indictment. So the district attorney would decide how to indict the case, and then that controlled the sentence. So for armed robbery, aggravated battery, murder, rape, the worst of the crimes, the sentence was mandated. The crimes sound very serious, but every case was not the same. And so you would find, for example, a rape case that turned out to be both parties, the victim and the defendant, were both intoxicated, and they had sex, and the next morning the woman asked the man, "Did we have sex? Because I didn't want to." And he would say, "Yes, we did." And that becomes a rape case, which maybe there's a crime, but the mandatory sentence is 10 to 20 years without parole. So you can understand that that situation would be quite different from somebody, say, breaking into a home and raping a woman, in her house. that defendant could deserve 10 to 20 years without parole. I found it in, so what happens is the Superior Court judges are cut out of this. And by the way, in Georgia, at 17, a person is considered an adult. And for the most serious crimes, they can be considered an adult if the district attorney decides they're an adult and sends them to Superior Court as young as age 12. Is it, Judge Tilley? I think it's 12.
It's
or
13, isn't it?
13.
13.
Well, when you look out at your adult courtroom and you see a tiny person who is 13 and he's charged with one of the most serious crimes with a mandatory sentence on there, and I can't send him back to juvenile court, which is much better equipped to deal with him than I am, I have absolutely no control over this. So, you know, at some point, I mean, I spent a lot of years in the system, a lot of very frustrating years, and it got worse and worse. So I started just getting creative and got in some trouble for it, but it seemed worth it. So I started telling the jury about a mandatory sentence. Oftentimes the sentence was mandatory because he was a recidivist. He had 3 priors, which might not have been serious. It could have been a shoplifting case. It could have been, you know, I mean, any felony, a small drug case. It's easy to rack up 3 felonies. And, but because of being a recidivist, he's going to get the maximum, a mandatory maximum. So in 2 different armed robbery cases, one case where the defendant was a drug addict, had a long history of drug problems. He had 3 priors. He went into a store and told the clerk that he had a gun, and she gave him, you know, $100. He was arrested a block away. He didn't have a gun, and there wasn't a gun ever seen, but he was charged with armed robbery, and because he had 3 priors, he was going to get life without the possibility of parole. It's a very expensive option for our system, among other things. I mean, this person needs drug treatment, obviously, maybe some punishment, drug treatment, which he's never gotten. But instead, the option is life without parole. And so in that case, and one other case that involved a person who used a fake gun, a toy gun. In those cases, I'm able to charge a lesser robbery charge, but without the jury understanding what they're doing, because all I can do is sentence at the end of this to the required mandated sentence. So I just couldn't handle this anymore. So I just told the jurors that in this particular case, if you find him guilty of armed robbery, the only sentence that can be imposed is life without the possibility of parole. Well, the district attorney went crazy. You know, they're happy to announce to the public with a press release after the conviction that this defendant got life without parole, but God forbid that the jury that is deciding the case know and understand that their verdict controls the punishment, not me. They think I'm controlling the punishment, but I have no impact on the punishment. It's their verdict. So every time I was able to tell the jury, you have a choice, and I'm not telling them what the choice should be. I'm just telling them that if they find armed robbery in this case, they have a choice between robbery and armed robbery. If they find armed robbery, the sentence is life without parole. They never find life with that. I mean, they never find armed robbery because they know how ridiculous it is. So I guess I'm in some way, I'm I'm causing jury nullification, but I believe that we're not prevented from telling the jury about their sentence. There's no law that says you can't tell them. It's more custom, and it became the custom when when we took sentencing away from the jurors back in the 70s, but there's nothing that says you can't inform them of what they're doing. And I think that we should, in certain circumstances where the sentence is controlled by the jury verdict. And it's a way to check the district attorney's power, which is essentially unlimited in these situations. And so that was my way. I got a lot of pushback from the district attorney, and I got a complaint with my JQC, but I didn't get in any lasting trouble. I feel like trouble is sort of my middle name, and if you're not gonna step out and do what you think is right, then why have the job? So because the problem is there are just very few ways for the judges to impact mass incarceration, and you have to think about how you can do this, because if you guys don't catch them in juvenile court, we've got them in superior court, and we've lost control at that point. Probation is kind of a joke, and if it's a serious crime, they're just going to prison for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, you have to read the chats to see, but because you've been called good, there's good trouble in there, and you've had a lot. So
it didn't feel great at the time, but it was well worth it. And I look back on it and I'm glad I did it, but I had to tell you the truth. I had enough of it. I mean, I took senior status at age 62. I just couldn't do it anymore. It's a battle, but I'm hoping that some of the younger judges with a lot of energy will take this on. It's not a crime to inform the jury. It's just a small way, of letting them know they're the community conscience. And I find that the jurors they want to do the right thing, and they're pretty shocked afterwards when they hear what the sentence is. I just, why should they find out afterwards and not know, going in there, what
Right.
they're doing?
Thank you very much. And and one of the questions, and we'll have our panel talk about it after Ms. James talks, and we're about to get to her. One of the questions is, how do judges guard against bad prosecutors? Well, and inadequate defense attorneys. But and I've saved up some questions that we had from last week that I'm going to ask y'all. But the prosecutor issue is a key thing that we learned, because it was a particular problem, of course, in Fulton County, that you indict at the highest level, you force a plea wherever you can. And so I'll get y'all to talk about that in a minute. But right now, Ms. James, would you please share with us the story your family, and it's first of all your son, went through?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I want to first give kudos to the two judges from Texas. Just excellent work and programs, and I'm so encouraged to know that there are people out there in positions such as yours who care and can see that there is a better path, a different path that can be taken. And also to you, Judge Crawford and Judge Shoob, as they say, good trouble for you. So in listening to all of what's been said tonight, I was thinking about what is it that I can say that's impactful. So I decided to just talk about, I think Judge Shoob talked about the impact that prosecutors have. And in our situation, my son is the first time offender. It's nonviolent crime, a DUI with a car accident with 2 serious injuries. So the prosecutor wanted or asked the judge to give 30 years. And so the judge, after my son made his statement, he was 3 years in college, a scholar athlete, first time offender, as I said. She said to him, well, you're not like the other people who've come in my court, who I've seen in my courtroom. But she still proceeded to sentence him to 20 years to serve 8. As you said, Judge Gibbons, as a family member, when you're first thrown into a situation such as that, it's shocking. You don't know where to go and who to turn to. And so in my introduction, you introduced me as part of the National Incarceration Association, which was founded by Kate Bosch, and I believe Kate is on here. She and I kept running into each other. Her son also was incarcerated at the time, and we were both trying to find out, where do we go? What do we do? Answers. How could this be? How do we help? How do we move things forward? So in over the years, we've found that there are so many families who have been impacted in trying to find answers, and the answers are just not there. But thankfully, my son came home in January of 2019. However, the emotional toll that it has taken on him, we're still unwinding all of the things, or trying to find out exactly, because of the, I think it's just, well, PTSD. He was told pretty much if he did what he needed to do, stay out of trouble, he could probably come home in the first 3 years, I think. I think you had to serve about a third of the time. But unfortunately, that did not happen. And when he was denied parole, he really just went into a deep, deep, deep depression. He spent the majority of his time in the hole, basically, for security reasons. He was in fear for his life. The first 6 months he was in, he was jumped on and beaten. No help from those in charge. He had an incident to occur, and when he was told that if he didn't tell, he would be sent to a maximum security. Well, as it turned out, they changed his security level from minimum to medium, which then put him in with people who were lifers. And so the whole, he's still struggling with even talking about the things that he has dealt with. But it has been a journey for our family. And what I talked to Judge Tilley about was the accountability. People who are able to impact your life in such a way. There have been situations I know where people have died in car accidents, and they have not gotten as much time as my son. Yes, we were sorry that happened to the family, but the way that the sentence, the length of the sentence, and then there aren't any programs. There's no rehabilitation. It's survival of the fittest. You take on a mindset of kill or be killed. So the impact when you come back out, you got to unlearn all of that stuff. People who don't, he's not even comfortable with anybody behind him. He's always looking around behind him. just those little things that he had to do in order to survive, to come home alive, because so many people, they don't even come home alive. And I can recall writing a letter to the commissioner saying, it's not supposed to be a death sentence. He should be able to do his time and come home and come out better for it, not worse. So that's just briefly.
Thank you, Ms. James. And one of the things that you shared with me that I wanted to, because this is a segue into one of the things I want to say that you all know, that is that we lift people up by treating people with respect, that we deal with people as human beings, we treat everyone with humanity. And you shared with me that the district attorney did not treat either your son or your family that way in court. Could you speak to that?
Yes, it was just so it just caught us off guard. We were there in the courtroom, and the case, the story that the district attorney came up with in presenting the case to the judge was just, it was as if we were the scum of the earth. And they didn't know anything about us other than this accident that happened. We left there feeling so unworthy, really, or as if we deserved everything that happened. And it's an experience that will live with us forever.
I know. We're so very sorry for that. And thank you for your courage. And somebody put in here, you're giving your heart self to tell us that story. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
You know, as we think about it, you know, last week on the prosecutor Zoom panel, one of the questions was, does restorative justice work? And of course, I'm texting back, yes, it does. And so I want to, let's think about whether restorative justice might have been a better option for Miss James's son in a situation like that. Somebody that, obviously, alcohol, problems with alcohol and misery and injury that results from that are very problematic. It's not a unique story, but we can deal with that, like the story Wendy told about the drug addict with the toy gun. Excuse me, Judge Shoob. I'm so sorry. There are ways people need other things than prison, and prisons cost a lot. The beds cost a lot, just like Judge Crawford was saying. I mean, he did a lot more with that young man that came back to his court for armed robbery than would sending him off for 2 years would have done. Would restorative justice been a better option?
Dr. Tilley, Judge Tilley, can I say something real quick to Ms. James?
Absolutely.
I just, having had a family member that's been incarcerated twice, who also had a drug problem, who was my motivation for becoming a prosecutor, you have to understand that in being an assistant DA, you are dealing with people's lives on both ends of that equation. The victims, those accused, and ultimately, if the sentence is jail time, shouldn't people still be entitled to their civil liberties? Should you not be free from assault and free from, and have access to healthcare and things like that? And so the punishment is supposed to be removal from society if that's what the judge assesses or the jury assesses, as in Texas, juries assess punishment as well. But aren't they still people? Should they not still be entitled to those things? And so I want to applaud you, Ms. James, for coming on and sharing that, because I understand that grief. And it's real. We're dealing with people's lives every day. That's why I tell people, come down to the courthouse when we were really open, right? Because now we're in a virtual world. But because the judges, we are making life and death decisions on a daily basis. And it's really important that you come and watch how the system unfolds. So I just wanted to applaud you, Ms. James, for sharing that your trauma, making it public. And I appreciate that.
Can I add into that?
Yes.
I was a former prosecutor as well, and one of the things, and Ms. James, thank you for sharing, because that's going back through a whole bunch of heartbreak, and it's hard sometimes for us to do that. So I give you that's a lot of courage to come on here and do that. And but one of the things that the funny story was, at Mercer Law School, I was trained. I went to the National Criminal Defense College to come out and could become a defense lawyer. And my first job after legal services was a prosecutor. But what I learned is you have to separate the issue that brings people to court versus the cause that brings people to court. And the cause is in the police report. But there's this issue out here that led to that cause. And it could be the drinking, the drugs, or whatever. And so now we're in this realm of therapeutic courts where we're trying to deal with the issue and stop dealing with the cause. And what we've had a system built on politicians with these, I'm going to be tough on crime. It's just Shoob, those mandatory mandates. Everybody was going out. Politicians said, we're going to lock them up. We're going to lock. And what we realized in Georgia is we're locking up more people than we have functioning in society. And when Governor Deal came up with this whole criminal justice reform thing and investing money into prevention, and that's how my CAPS program get financed. But I'm saying that because right now we're looking at our system as a whole, even here in Georgia, and said, listen, we know what caused, there was a cause here and there's an injury here, but now the issue is, how do we deal with the issues that led to this cause so that this person doesn't become a revolving door in this system? And let me explain to you all, every time a criminal statute, I learned this from a sheriff. He said, every time they pass a criminal statute, it costs you something. Because that means a police officer's got to lock that person up. They got to spend time in the jail. You got to pay for them to be incarcerated. If they're going to get prison time, you got to pay for every time there is a criminal statute passed. It costs you money. It costs society. So that's my spiel.
So I'll add to that spiel. So yeah. Oh, go ahead, Judge Kelly.
Well, I was just going to say that I was a prior prosecutor in 2 different states and 2 different counties. Say that I have never had any training on getting to the root of the issue.
Come closer to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I said I have been a prosecutor in 2 different states and 2 different counties, and I had never had any training on getting to the root of the issue. As a prosecutor, I was trained to evaluate whether or not I could prove the case and what was the punishment range, not how did this person get here? And how can we eliminate him coming back? So I think I don't think there's enough light that is placed on the power of the pen of the prosecutor. I always talk about the power of the pen to the pipeline of possibility kids. I grab a pen and I say, my pen has a lot of power in it. If I sign, I could take you, put you in jail, and then you won't be able to go to work and you lose your job and so on and so on. But I don't think that people realize how much power the prosecutor has in their plea recommendations. I mean, if you're offering 50 years to someone, they're going to go to a trial because they're not going to want to take 50 years. And so that power in that pen it's also problematic and leads to situations like Miss James' son. Miss James, I'm really sorry that your family went through that. But I think what we need to start dealing with or start addressing is the power of the prosecutor and their pen, and digging deeper to the issue of the problem and not how the prosecutors can prove it. Because that's what I was trained. How do you prove it? How do you win at trial? Not how do you fix the problem, the underlying issue.
That's great.
Sorry, Judge Tilley. And that's absolutely right. Discretion, all the discretion lies with the state. The court in Texas, we've only been giving maybe 4 or 5 reasons that a judge could ever dismiss a case. The charge belongs to the state. And I think that's, it's important for people to have life perspective, different perspectives in the DA's office, and going to the DA's office. It's fun. The brother that I'm telling you about that went to the pen twice, he's the one that told me to go to the DA's office, because he's the one that said, that's where you have all the discretion. People with different experiences need to be there, because like Judge Kelly said, your oath as a prosecutor is, can you prove the case? If you can't prove the case, then that's when you're told you dismiss. But you have to look at the person that's being accused of the crime. And so we need people with different experiences in all these roles: judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, probation. And so it's important that we don't have these limited views of people. And that discretion is so key.
That's great. I appreciate all of you saying that. I want to be sure that everybody on this call, because not everybody on this call is an attorney, I know. And so you're living in the incarceration nation, right? We have more people under correctional control in the United States of America than any other nation in the world. And that's not civilized nations. That's not first world nations. That's every nation. And for those of us in Georgia, we are living in the incarceration state, in the incarceration nation. We have more people under correctional control than any other state, including Texas. Now, how about that?
Yeah.
Is that, I'm not, yeah. So Georgia. And I'm not a sitting judge anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and say private prisons are a problem. Private probation, anytime you privatize one of these functions, it's a problem, because we don't need to be paying people. We don't need to incentivize keeping people under correctional control. We need to incentivize rehabilitation and things like that. We've had a question about the role of law schools in this conversation. And I also want to be sure we answer the question. Last time was asked, we have established what is broken, and what can we do to fix it, meaning people on the Zoom call. So let's think about how those who are listening to this, what do we want them to advocate for? So, panel? Or what do you recommend they advocate for?
So I think from looking at the chats, I would suggest talking to the individuals that are creating the laws. Ultimately, as Judge Shoob said, your hands on the bench are tied many times by what your legislature has created that is the law that you shall follow. And so I would invite people, and it sounds corny. You say, well, talk to your local, representative, but that's real. It changes lives. And they meet every year. The law changes every single year, and you don't have to know how to draft the legislative language. They have, people that work for them that do that. So all you have to do is go to them with the idea, the general idea. They will draft the language for you. And I'll tell you, in Texas, we have this concept of judicial clemency. It's been on the books for over 60 years. Well, in 2018, our legislature actually passed the bill, and it required that judges in Texas give a written admonishment to people who were placed on straight probation, so they're actually convicted, give them a written admonishment that they have the right to come back within 30 days of the expiration of their probation and ask us to give them judicial clemency. What is that? It's like a pardon from the governor. It dismisses the case. So I had an opportunity to work with law schools, and we're talking about law schools and the roles that they have. Law schools can start these classes, these legislative classes where they find a local representative to work with, and they propose 2 bills each session. And so I was asked to testify before the Texas legislature about, well, judicial clemency. Are people asking you for it? How do you think, how can we improve what we already have on the books? And I just suggested that it be in writing, because we give 25 admonishments during a plea. And so who's going to remember, I got 30 days after my probation ends to come back and ask for a dismissal, because it wipes clean the slate. Now, it does still show up on their rap sheet. And that's something that State Representative Carla Sherman in Texas is looking at. But it gives them a dismissal, and it gives them the right to vote again. And so that's all because law students proposed a bill to one of their local representatives, and it was passed. And so it sounds, we talk about it all the time, go to the Capitol, but literally go to the Capitol and talk to your local representative about the problems that you're seeing in the system. Give them that general idea, stick with it, make sure that you find someone that you think will support the bill. And I can tell you, it sounds complicated, it really is not. Get involved. Don't just look at and this is even to attorneys, don't just open the code book, because those things once weren't law either. And so it took someone to speak up and say, I think we need to change something. And so I would invite everybody. I tell jurors, if they don't like what they hear inside the courtroom, charter a bus to Austin, because that is where you change the laws.
And on the same, I guess the same line is, I think you need to get to know the players in the process, and hold them accountable. Elections are important. Honestly, prosecutors are elected. And so if you have a prosecutor who's not providing proper training to their prosecutors and just teaching them to get the most time that they can and conviction rates, then that might be something you want to have at your church. Someone of faith was asking, what can the faith community do? Invite the prosecutor to explain his policies on restorative justice and what he's doing. And if he or she's not doing what you feel should be, that's the best for the community, that's creating more of a problem in the program, in the process, and then maybe that's a person that shouldn't be a prosecutor, and he shouldn't have that position anymore, she or he. Same thing with judges. Same thing with the sheriff. If you have inmates that are being abused and they're not being treated fairly, then you need to hold your sheriff accountable, or whoever's over the jail. So, you always hear people saying, go vote, but it's really important in this process that you have the right players in place that are all trying to make sure that the criminal justice system isn't so broken, and doing the right things to make things better.
And Velma, let me add, I saw somebody talking about the faith-based community. One of the things we formed in Dekalb Juvenile Court, we needed an outside nonprofit to do the things we couldn't do, like give kids meals when they come to the evening programs, or like recently, because of virtual learning, they supplied 14 laptops to our kids in the GED program so they can continue with the GED. But we had a lot of church organizations that are part of our juvenile justice program. So your nonprofit organizations, even your churches, some of the churches have nonprofits, you can connect with the court system in terms of helping the mom with drug issues, a network with getting her furniture for her home. But I agree with everyone else. One of the things law school does, law school teaches us, the theories of law, but it doesn't teach us much about the practice of law.
Right.
You get out and then you have to retrain yourself how to practice law, because law is not just a theory. Law is now, you got to interview people, and you got to talk with people, and you got to communicate. And so that's the difference there. But I think what we need to do is, one of the ways we're addressing these new therapeutic courts is we're now connecting people to positive resources in the community. And I think you all should have a voice in it. The faith-based community can have a great voice. I'm gonna give one last thing. I had a legislature, they were talking in this past legislative session, and they were talking about increasing the age and for which you could charge a child as an adult to 18. So she asked me, what did you think of it? I said, well, you know, maturity, you don't mature in 12 months. I said, so a 17-year-old is just as immature as an 18-year-old. But what are you trying to say, that a 17-year-old they can't vote, there are all these things they can't do until they're 18 because you're saying they're not mature enough to do it. But on the same hand, you want to charge them with an adult offense and charge them as if they're an adult. You can't split their brain and say they're mature on one side of their brain and immature on the other. No, it's one brain. And they're immature 17-year-old that should be treated like a child. And if you got to make a decision. They're either adult at 18 or they're immature child at 17 that you want to charge as an adult.
Yeah, that's a fight we've been working on in Georgia, but have been failing so far. Well, we're about to wind up. I want to give Ms. James do you have anything in closing you want to say? Everybody else has had an opportunity, and Judge Shoob.
Well, I just wanted to say that it's very encouraging to participate in this panel and to hear the brilliant minds that are now looking at this problem and looking at reshaping how we go forward in terms of dealing with mass incarceration and restoring the dignity of those who have been justice involved. So thank you.
Thank you for participating. Judge Shoob?
Yes, I would just join the others in saying you have to talk to your legislator, go to the legislature. They're the ones passing these laws that are causing this mass incarceration problem. And what they're doing with the mass incarceration is they're depriving us of every other resource, because imprisoning people for so long is so expensive, so that we have no other resources as a result. So they've just gutted probation, and we have no programming for Superior Court. So you know, we assume that these people will be back, and so it's just completely wrong-headed, and it's been driven for years. And I think people are starting to understand, but I think the legislature needs to understand that people don't want people in prison forever anymore. I mean, that they can dial back that rhetoric, and they can roll back some of these laws that are just so onerous and have caused this problem that is just so painful for so many families.
Thank you so much. And before Lydia comes on, well, come on, Lydia, but I want to say thank you to these folks first. Judge Shoob, Judge Crawford, Ms. James, Judge Givens, and Judge Kelly. Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this panel. You have been an inspiration to all of us. And thank you, all of you who joined this Zoom call, and to Haya, who has made it all work, and to Reverend Lydia, who is now going to close us, and for everybody else involved. EMI, Reverend Vaughn is on, I see. Thank you. And you've just been wonderful, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. Hey, Judge.
Can I say hats off to the next Senator Warnock? He is my homeboy from Savannah, and he grew up in Caton Homes, which was up the street from where I grew up. And Caton Homes sat it was two projects, Caton and Fraser Home. My church that I attended sat in between those projects. This is why I say the faith-based community is so important. Those church doors were never closed. Some of my greatest friends came out of those neighborhoods, and it offered tons of services to kids in that neighborhood. So hats off to my homeboy.
Amen.
So let me say this to Judge Crawford. I actually graduated from Savannah High. My dad was in the military, so he retired there. So we're going to have to connect and share some stories.
Yes. Small world.
Amazing. Well, I echo everyone's gratitude and appreciation. I see Reverend Vaughn on as well. From both of us, just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And I know there are so many people who are inspired today. I hope that our friends on Facebook were watching as well, and we'll scroll through tonight to see more. Just a reminder from Gloria, who I saw chatting in, that her voice is not serving her tonight. Refuah shlema, as we say, a complete and speedy healing to you. Come on again next week, y'all. We'll be here again Tuesday, 6 o'clock. That's October 27th. You can use the same exact link. We'll be talking about policing and its role in mass incarceration, maybe even ending mass incarceration. Check out our website, www.endingmassincarceration.com, for all the things that we're working on and updates in this network. We're so glad to now count you among us. And we're excited to continue learning from you all. Do you want to close this in a very short word of prayer, Reverend Vaughn?
I will, and thank you so much. It is what a wonderful, wonderful evening. Let us pray. God, you who are so very present amidst this, God who thirsts for justice, help us to be your hands in this work. May your spirit infuse us. May you transform systems and situations that indeed might be grounded in love. They may be grounded in new beginnings. So God, we place it all into your hands, and we're grateful for those servants tonight who shared. May you uphold them, strengthen them, give them your courage and guidance, and most of all, give them your love. We claim your blessings in your name and in the name of all those that have come before us, that have made yet even this day possible. Amen.